Hello, and welcome to the Social Power Lab podcast, brought to you by VUCA's Leadership Group.
Bonjour, salut. What is up, people of the interwebs? It is your boy, Adrian Deschamps II, coming at you live from the W, that is Windsor, Ontario, with Dr. Ted Vokes, the man, the myth, the legend himself. And we are here once again on Social Power Lab to talk about the world, power, psychology, culture, and all that good stuff that I find myself thinking about at the odd times of night when I am rolling back and forth with my two fans, constantly pushing cold air at me, because that's how I sleep. I don't know how anybody else sleeps, but yeah, we're back again. And yeah, Ted, what are we talking about today?
I'm still speechless after that introduction, as I
You can't be
usually am.
speechless every time I do an introduction.
Yeah, it's true. It's true because you're overly kind. But what I'm hung up on now is when you said my two fans, I was thinking like there's two fans in your room, not blowing cold air on you, but like worshiping at your feet.
Oh, like
So yeah, that's right. That's
I meant like appliances, like
no, I no, I
ceiling
was
fan and
thinking
desk fan.
because you do have a fan following.
I
Let's
mean, I
face it.
feel like
I mean,
if there
I'm
was
part of
two
it.
fans in my room watching me sleep, it'd be you and Trent, but
Yeah, it would
it might be.
probably be two of us. Yeah. Your favorite stalkers. Um, yeah, so good to be back. We did take a week or two off there while folks kind of took a little bit of vacay time. But we're back to regale you with more stories, anecdotes, and perspective on social power. And this week, I mean, I'm always excited about our episodes, but this one, we're going to go macro. In our last episode, we were more micro, culture on a given street in Windsor, Ontario, back in the 2000s or something like that, right? And so we've been talking about power as a core feature, really the defining feature of all culture. And as we've said from the outset, all 12 forms of power work on every single level of analysis between a dyad, it's like speak for two people interacting consistently. They form a culture of two. If you're in a romantic relationship, any stage in it, you are either forging a culture or working a culture and modifying that culture between the two of you as you grow and mature together in life, all the way up to nation states and all points in between. All 12 forms of power operate on those levels, and there's culture on all of those levels. So you and your siblings will have created a family culture, but then as you go on and form your conjugal families, you'll still have that origin culture in common, but you will craft a different conjugal family culture with the respective partners amongst you and your other siblings. And then, once there was no such thing called the United Nations, and then after World War II, there was. And that was a response to trying to do something different to avert any further world wars. It's up for debate as to whether or not it's been successful in that regard. Sadly, in my view anyway, much of its promise hasn't been actualized. Not for effort. A lot of folks have worked really hard to try to make the United Nations a meaningful and useful institution, and it has had some successes, but not nearly as many as perhaps it was envisioned at its outset. So, but that's about culture and power, right? As to whether or not the United Nations would ever stand a chance at accomplishing what the visionaries who assembled that had hoped it might do. So, yeah, so we're going to go to the macro today, a more grand scale. You got anything to add on that one before I dive into this mysterious word called VUCA, Adrian?
Yeah, I mean, today, I don't know. Today's going to be cool because on the macro front, if you're a weird nerd like me and Ted, macro to me, correct me if I'm wrong, Ted. Macro to me is also like time periods.
Absolutely.
I kind of, my weird physics ish mind thinks of different points in time as just different physical places because yeah, science, there's reasons, but that's something interesting to look at too from a macro perspective, right? Is just, at a certain point in time, what was the dominant agent of reality shaping power, right? What are the things that people put trust in compared to what they put trust in now? And I feel like at a national level, that's like, that has become night and day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, and then, the different kind of ages throughout history, right? Right now we're supposed to be, correct me if I'm wrong, the information age, but I think we're going into the technology age. I read somewhere is what it's being considered now, or
And
even
even just the attention age, right? With technology being central to every age for sure, but
yeah,
everything is a competition for attention.
or the
And
artificial intelligence age. I read that one
mhm,
somewhere too.
yeah, yeah,
There's just, yeah, like there's just so much changing, right? And with every systemic change comes a whole new host of power dynamics and
mhm,
shifts in power, right? Like there's there's things as an adult that I would never consider to not have power over me, such as when I was a child, right? I gave like a very small example, but like in a lot of our childhoods, if something was in the newspaper, it was like law, right? Like
it's
it was
true.
it was true, right?
Yeah,
It had legitimate power, it had reality shaping power because it was
yeah,
the newspaper, right?
yeah,
Now, you know, half of us don't really believe anything that we read in the newspaper because a lot of media has lost a lot of trust, right? They've lost forms of power, quite frankly. They've
yeah,
lost referent power, and therefore they're losing their legitimate power and their reality shaping power, right? Like it's just things are just changing.
yeah.
Yeah, anyway, before I
Yeah.
start ranting, I'll let you explain VUCA.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is we're living in a period of history that historians and political scientists would refer to as a VUCA period. And before I dive into that, I want to underscore what you just said, Adrian. Different, when we do training and leadership, we look at culture a great deal, but it's not culture only from physical space to physical space, company A to company B, or team X compared to team Y, and the same company will have different subcultures within that culture, and that doesn't mean that they're wrong. um, I was counted up about 22 different military units that in my about 9 years in the military, I was either temporarily posted to and or or sort of affiliated with in some regards. And of those, a number of them I was OIC, officer in command of, and no two of those cultures were identical, even though the military really goes for uniformity of culture. But I remember being sent down from Cold Lake, Canadian Forces Base Cold Lake, down to CFB Penhold to do ground safety officer training, 2-week course, and it was all in Alberta. Alberta is a province of Canada, by the way, out west, and the rules and regulations between those two bases in the same province, never mind in the same military, were different. When I got to Penhold, they're wearing their name tags on the pocket flap instead of above the pocket flap, and it was and the way that we wore different uniforms was slightly different depending on the base. And I came from a training program that was very, very spit and polish, and I went down there and I reported to the orderly room. I was a brand new captain, and I, came to attention at the door of the orderly room, and a gruff old major was in there and didn't even glance up. And I said, Captain Vokes reporting, sir. And, at attention. And he sort of glanced up and he said, Vokes, you're overtrained. Get in here, sit down. It was anything but spit and polish. It was, we salute once a day around here if we have to, kind of attitude. So, if the military, and Canadian military is not unique in this regard. I had an opportunity to interact with other people from other militaries. They don't have absolute uniformity of culture. They have sort of standards, but even some of those standards aren't supported culture to culture. So if the military can't keep uniformity of culture, you're going to have subcultures within a larger organization. Even a medium-sized organization is going to have team by team different cultures, and that doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's entirely possible to have one team that's dysfunctional. We deal with situations like that in highly functional organizations, but they got one dysfunctional team. Or it can be the other way around. You could have one or two functional teams in a clusterfuck of an organization. Oops, I dropped another F-bomb there. So human beings create culture, and we're living in a period in history. So I was comparing culture space to space. We can go the next layer and say, there's a Canadian culture, but there's different regional cultures. My family in the Maritimes does life differently than we do here in Ontario. My friends in British Columbia on the other side of the country, they kind of have a different sort of way of approaching life and that sort of thing out in BC. We get these regional differences in culture, and then we can get into ethnic and national differences in culture. But here's where I want to land this. Adrian's point: over time, in the same space, culture changes, and that's what we're seeing a lot of right now. So my grandparents' culture in Brampton, Ontario was small town Brampton, and very, very waspish white Anglo-Saxon Protestant composition of that community that my dad grew up in. And today Brampton is a thriving metropolis of its own, and it is anything but white Anglo-Saxon Protestant anymore. There's been tons of new Canadians that have come to that community and changed. So culture in time changes is the point that we're trying to make here. That same place, same name to that particular place. I came to Windsor for graduate school, and I've seen Windsor culture change over the years since I've made my home here. It's not the same places that I landed in. That doesn't mean it's worse. In fact, I think it's in many respects better. I never really hated it, but it's different, much different than it once was. So that's the inevitability of power in flux, right? Power changes and evolves, and that changes culture. And it can be intentional, and it can be manipulated, or it can be just a collective experience if we want to do our community different or our city differently. When I grew up in the Toronto area, it was called Toronto the Good. That was sort of a nickname for it. I had a bunch of nicknames. I don't think anybody calls Toronto the Good anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is, So all of this is change in the same space over time. That's Adrian's great point, and I just took too many words to describe it.
No, it's beautiful.
So we're going to go on the macro and say that we are in this period of VUCA, And what is VUCA? It's an acronym that came out of the United States Army War College, after the former Soviet Union collapsed, and nobody could predict what was going to happen. There were many, many predictions made as the various states of the Soviet regime separated off, broke away, and nobody saw Putin being the one to eventually rise and become the president slash dictator of Russia today. And so that was not predicted in effect. And so the political scientists of the era called it VUCA. And VUCA is an acronym for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And this is a cocktail of conditions that brains hate, because brains like things that are predictable, because then I can make better predictions. If my environment is predictable, I can say, you know what, this just happened. I think this is going to be Adrian's response to that. But and we like that. I know Adrian well, so I can still kind of predict that, but beyond that, not a whole lot, because everything is very much in flux, and that means power is in flux, and culture is in flux. So VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. There have been periods in history well before this acronym was created to describe these periods of cultural upheaval. World War II was a VUCA period in history. World War I was a VUCA period in history. The Cold War, once it got underway, is sort of described as a non-VUCA period. It was actually quite stable, even though it was based on this constant threat of nuclear annihilation, right? Mutually assured destruction was the thing that kept anybody from pushing the button, and everybody's afraid that maybe an error would happen and the button would get pushed in error, and it almost did a few times, and thankfully we didn't blow ourselves off the face of the planet. But the Cold War was a fairly stable period in history. It was the big standoff between liberal democracies and other types of regimes that might be described as totalitarian, or certainly non-democratic. So then the Soviet Union collapses, and we think, hooray, liberal democracies won. And indeed, that's not been really the case. And so we seem to be in a really big VUCA period today. And this is brought upon even further by this concept, again, from political science, called polycrisis. And a polycrisis is a whole bunch of unrelated crises. Let's pick some. Food insecurity in various parts of the globe, political instability in various parts of the globe, climate change, however you relate to it, and showing up differently on the globe, the implementation of all this uncertainty around first cryptocurrency and now on top of that AI. So all of these. And there's many more events, of course, that I'm failing to mention. That you got all these separate, events around the world, and a polycrisis is one where these crises start to impact each other. And in a globalized world, that is much more common to happen than in a very fractionated world where maybe we don't even know there's another continent on the other side of the planet. But now that we're keenly aware that we've discovered all the continents and the peoples within them, we got this huge issue about there's all these crises, and they're starting to bounce off each other. They're starting to magnify and make it even more unpredictable, hence the VUCA idea. So how did I do with that, Adrian?
See, that was pretty smack dab on.
Says somebody, in psychology, listening to somebody's psychology trying to speak political science. But I apologize to my political science friends. for any oversimplifications I've made, because we're certainly not those, but we do know a bit about power. So, so that's the context and why culture today is not what it was even, a decade ago, which is a short period for culture change.
It really
Yeah,
is, honestly.
yeah, yeah.
And there's things from like a decade or so, like a decade or more ago. Like, okay, remember the little old conspiracy rumor about the world ending in 2012
Yes,
with the
yes,
whole like
yeah,
Mayan calendar thing, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, like at that time, again, like no one believed it, right? But well,
Yeah, I
no,
think
no,
there
no,
was some,
nobody
but
believed.
yeah,
But
yeah,
like, if you were to hear something like that today in 2026, we'd just be like, oh yeah, whatever. What's next, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
a lot of
just
because of the VUCA period, so many of us are just desensitized. Like nothing surprises us anymore.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I think after COVID, I think there was like a few other like very small warnings about like different um diseases, right? Like I think there was like
Mhm.
something about monkeypox or something, and
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
I heard there was something else, and like people just barely even responded. Like it's like there was just like no care, right? It was
Hmm.
just like okay, whatever. And I think yeah, that has a lot to do with what VUCA has just done to us as an entire culture, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it
and
is a species. Yeah,
yeah, because again, so many of us, we had to deal with uncertainty and complexity and these things that, like you mentioned, our brain is not wired for, right?
no,
I
no.
remember, I don't know if you remember this, we were having a phone call, me and you, during
Yeah.
the pandemic, and you said you had just gone grocery shopping, and you said to me, 1 second, I need to wipe my car trunk door or something, because
Right.
at that time we didn't
Yeah,
know how the virus was being transmitted, right?
that's right. Yeah,
Like this was super early in the
yeah, yeah.
stages, right? And it was
Yeah.
like we didn't know if it existed on surfaces. We didn't know, so we were like
Was it?
wiping down everything. I remember I was living with my mom still, and she was a nurse, so she actually, you know what, my mom was actually in contact with one of the first people that had COVID in Windsor.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a nurse. And I remember like it was this thing where we had to put like a garbage bag in the garage for her to like put her clothes in, her work clothes in, as kind of, because we just had no idea, right?
Oh
um
yeah.
and
No, we had the same things. I'd do the grocery shopping, and back then usually my son would come with me. It was our Friday night thing, and I was like, no, only one of us goes. And then I would come in and strip down, go shower, and then change and stay away from everybody until that had happened. So
yeah,
and it was the maximum uncertainty of it all.
and that itself just set people's behavior and the way that they used power awry. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I remember
Yeah.
the first time I went to like the grocery store or anything, it felt so strange.
Yep.
Like just to
Yep.
be around people and how they were reacting. And I think like I saw a fight almost break out because somebody bumped into somebody else's shopping cart or something. It's like something
Yeah.
little.
Yeah.
This guy just got so angry, and then a bystander actually came in and said like, okay, what's wrong, what do you want, hand sanitizer, is that going to calm you down? And then she had to like squirt some hand sanitizer on his hand, and he finally calmed down and stuff like that. And I'm like,
Wow.
that is a
Yeah.
bizarre power exchange right there.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
have one guy yelling at somebody from bumping into the cart. The person that bumped into him was just like, screw this, I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah.
and you had a bystander, come in with resource power, referent power, like what, just these different things that play out one
Resource
time,
power,
right?
the hand sanitizer,
Yeah,
right?
it's like, I
Yeah.
have the thing that's going to calm you down, right? The
Yeah.
hand sanitizer. Um, yeah, like just so many weird things at that time. And you know what? Probably the most bizarre part is right now that I actually can't believe. I kind of forget if COVID did exist on surfaces. Like to that point, so many details of that time period are
Yeah.
just gone to so many people
Yeah.
because our working memory was affected so much, and the whole traumatic experience of it all kind of affected how we encode memories, right? There were entire video games I played during that time period that I don't remember anything about.
Hmm.
Yet
Yeah.
I spent hours playing them, right? As the time was passing by and as, we were all off work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, like just the nature of power exchanges was just so interesting. And then to the point of like conformity based dynamics, appeal oriented power.
Right.
You had the people that would follow the rules and the people that wouldn't.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would create so much tension in power dynamics, right? Like you would
Yeah.
have people refusing to wear a mask if they went into a public space. And then you would see like fights almost break out, right? Or you would see, I remember I saw a TikTok video of this girl just quitting her job because people were coming in and refusing to wear masks. And she had somebody at home that was immunocompromised or something. And she literally just said, like, this isn't worth it. And she just
Yeah.
took off her apron thing. And then she's like, I'm done. Like, this isn't worth it. Like, if,
Yeah.
it's not worth it to come work here if I can possibly get, transmitted this disease that can harm my loved one at home because this person doesn't want to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Right. And like, if you think about the power dynamics in that, it's just like, holy mackerel, right? Like the reality shaping power, the superordinate power, the appeal oriented power, the like just there's just so much there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was
And
just
all in flux.
all in
All
flux.
in
Yeah,
flux.
all in flux. And there was points where I don't know, there was some announcement that I forget the details, but there was some, at least for our province, there was some announcement of you could have been pulled over and asked where you were going if you were out in public, and that there was going to be like a curfew or something.
Okay.
And then I think it was that, you know, I don't know, different police forces across the province and country were kind of like, yeah, we're not doing that. Right? Like they made social media posts about it. So again, just like rejecting legitimate power from, the political choices that were made, but also, you know, using reality shaping power for the populace as well, of like, what is the next chapter of this pandemic going to look like, right?
Yeah.
And because everyone's sitting there and they're like, what's going to be taken away from me next? Or, you know, what's the new measure of freedom that I can expect? You know, like it was just
Yeah.
so much was happening. And even just between friendships,
Mhm.
I had people, it's kind of weird. It's like, it's almost like the pandemic, is like our new, like before common era split.
Yeah. Yeah.
I literally think of things sometimes as before COVID and after COVID.
Yeah.
Because there was just, jobs I worked before COVID. And when I went back to work after COVID, everything was different, right? Like it was just, yeah. But before I keep just, lollygagging along here, Let's have a little commercial break and we will see you back very soon as we dive deeper.
Sounds good.
The Social Power Lab podcast is sponsored by VUCA Leadership Group, a Canadian-based local and internationally active practice in industrial and organizational psychology. We help organizations of every size and sector develop leaders and transform culture. We do this by ethically deploying social power through science-based training, coaching, consulting, surveys, and personnel selection. If you're dealing with challenges in engagement, conflict, resistance to change, or crisis, VOCS Leadership Group is ready to meet you where you're at. Visit VOCSleadershipGroup.com to learn how our team can support your culture and leadership goals today.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the sound of Trenton's crisp voice. He got no training for that. He just had kind of had that voice, and it actually started as a compliment one day. I think it was like one of the first times he came on a call with me, at least.
Yeah.
And I was like, "You sound like a radio host," and he took that to heart, and then here we are.
Here we are. Yeah.
But,
This many years later.
talking about the many shifts in power that we see throughout history, and throughout time and space and culture and on a macro level. It's just like there's so much.
We are living in times that I don't have a precedent for in my lifespan thus far. I remember saying during COVID, we can't really say this is kind of like the time when,
Yeah.
because nobody had a rule book for it. Like the last time it was the Spanish flu after World War I, so 1919, and that was a very different time. And nobody who was alive then was alive for COVID, and so and we're still kind of in this post. This is why I think things didn't just return to a normal, if you will,
No.
or back to a cultural norm after COVID. Still tension, still anxiety, still anger. Sometimes families had splits, friends had splits,
Yeah.
and so it changed relational dynamics. You changed your network, perhaps.
Yeah. I was gonna say that.
Right.
That was one of my points. Was like before the break was like there are people in my life that I just never talked to again after the pandemic. Not for any specific reason,
Mm,
but it's just like we grew apart, right? Like
yeah.
people lost their jobs and started new careers. That's the other thing too. Like the amount of new careers that came about during COVID
Hmm.
is baffling. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, um, with the emergence of Zoom, and I heard of one person who was like, I don't know, they were working some type of something that required you to be in person. Let's put it that way. They were like doing some type of engineering or factory work or something. And they basically just put that entire career behind them to sell insurance out of their bedroom is the way that it was framed to me. Right. I mean,
Right.
obviously they had a workstation in their
Yeah.
bedroom and they were doing, they were an insurance broker. And, but that's like an entire career shift for that person. Right.
Mhm.
And then think of all the new people you're going to meet in that business, people that you're going to leave behind, not for any specific reason, but just the natural transition of, workplaces and stuff like that. Um, I think I said something else with the pandemic is I had some cousins that were 10 years old maybe when the pandemic started, and then I didn't see them again until they were 13 or 14 or something, and they all of a sudden were adolescents, and then they doubled in height, and it was like, oh my god. So yeah, so lots of changes and shifts in power. And that actually kind of leads to a next point, not to make this whole thing about COVID, but I find that COVID was a precursor for a huge shift in reality shaping power and a huge shift in expert power. Again, just a kind of a working hypothesis here, but I find that perspectives on what is truth has never been more ambiguous and uncertain and volatile and complex. There we go. I said VUCA backwards. Um, it's never been more, you know, reckless than it is now.
Yeah,
We can see a news article heading and we have no idea if there is any legitimacy to it,
yeah,
if there is any, I don't know, ulterior agenda to it. Just the population in general is extremely mistrusting of different systems that were once, trusted,
yeah.
right?
Trust it. And trust, just insert this for those who, because we talked about this early on in our episodes. Trust is only a matter of how I expect you to use your power in relation to me, right? And so, are you going to use your power in a way that benefits me or potentially disadvantages me?
Yeah.
And um, who do you give reality shaping power to? People you trust, because you think these people won't steer me astray. And there's this newish term called legacy media, meaning the old media outlets, CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, PBS, but there was, CNN and Al Jazeera and, so many of these institutional news organizations that now are highly suspect by many people. And, because they have an agenda, they're in the back pockets of somebody. So they're selling us a bill of goods, through their news reporting that's actually intended to manipulate us, not inform us
Yep.
right. So legacy media is now in many quarters considered a slur, you know, um,
Interesting.
and and so we've been finding naturally, because brains look to other brains to define reality. We've all needed to determine who do we trust and who do we not. I've found various social or media outlets over the last number of years that I put a lot of stock in, and they're much smaller than a big corporation once was. I mean, there's many of those corporations still around: the Washington Post, New York Times, the Atlantic. These are all, big name media outlets who are striving to be taken credibly by some portions of the population. And um, yeah, I mean, I listen to a little Canadian news outlet called The Hub, and they are really trying to provide social commentary from a more small C conservative standpoint, I would say. I found various journalists who sort of gone out on their own, who I give reality shaping power to. Um, and then there's generational differences because, some people swear by Mr. Beast and Markiplier, for their information and their perspective, and and I don't listen to legacy media, things like that. So where do we get reality shaping power from? To whom we give it, and that means I trust these certain, suppliers of information, versus I mistrust these others for their intentions. Um, the rise of the billionaire class is massively different, where billionaires some have more money than some countries, some nation states, right? And so the rules are in flux, is what we're trying to say, and rules are simply, if it's codified, then it's legitimate power. The rules of conducting journalism are now altered, um, and have been, being altered for many years now. The but those would be more like cultural norms within the profession of journalism. Um, but if we get into other forms of rules that were pushed back on during COVID, mandatory use of masks and screening and COVID vaccination certificates and things like that to go to the mall. There's a lot of pushback on those implemented rules, as well as others who say, no, this is keeping me safe, or is keeping my grandmother at home safe, right? Um, so we all had to make some really different decisions. And let's bring in the other really big one right now, AI,
Mhm.
because, as Adrian and I were chatting in the lead up to this episode, I wouldn't know if I were teaching right now at the university. We're not doing that right now because we're writing books. But I would often be asked by students, should I go into psychology? Should I go into business? What fields do you think are going to be hot coming up? And I used to have some pretty reasoned answers to that, and now I'm not confident in anything that I might say. I might even just say, hang on, we'll see. We'll see what AI will be capable of and what it'll be put to, and
The first step of
and
science is observation. Like we're at that point.
yeah,
Like we
yeah.
just observe because yeah.
I don't know what I would say to somebody, and some people have analyzed it more thoroughly than we have, and they might have some, but there is still only going to be guesses because the brain's a prediction machine, but it's not a very good one. We know this, and the brain doesn't actually learn that it's not a very good prediction machine because we still need it to make predictions.
Yeah.
We still need to see, that's what it's about. It looks to other brains. What do you think? What do you think is happening? You're hearing Adrian and I piecing this together as we're going,
Yeah,
trying to
we're
make sense of this, you know. And so I wanted to underscore trust, because trust is only about power. We differentiate it from confidence. Confidence in somebody means I believe they have the abilities to do what they say they're going to do. I believe if Windsor Fire and Rescue show up, they will be competent at putting out a fire. I have that confidence in them. I also, because I know some of those great folks, I trust them too, right? I believe that their heart is in the right place for doing that, that they're not going to simply show up for, to assist in situations where, they only like the people, or, we don't go to, homes that voted this way. We only go to that. Like that would be ridiculous. That would be very distressing. But I have confidence in their capacity, and I have trust that they're going to show up and do a great work for, the people who need them. But there are a lot of other fields that are losing a lot of trust. Science overall is being critiqued and beat up well past what the scientists themselves, speaking as an applied scientist, um, we haven't lost, or at least I have not lost my faith in the scientific method and the endeavor to try to produce knowledge that is of a universal nature. But many people have lost faith in, and you were mentioning it earlier at the outset, Adrian, expert power, right?
Yeah.
Scientists are one brand of expert. Lawyers are another brand of expert. And uh, firefighters and whomever has mastered a trade or a profession would be experts. And there's a lot more skepticism about whether or not to trust what they tell us or what their motives are. What are the motives behind those who are developing AI? Is it world domination? Or is it the betterment of all of humanity?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Any. any technology can be put to, any number of uses.
That's it, right? Like I had this conversation today, and from the information I have a good friend who is doing their PhD in cybersecurity right now,
Mm,
and you know, me and her were talking about AI, and like, you know, I use AI for like very unimportant things. Like I use it just to like, what's something low stakes. And so the one day I had like, this much curry sauce left over. I had, you know 200 grams of noodles, and I had some like chicken breast or something cut up. So I told AI I have this much sauce, this much noodles, this much whatever. What should I put in to make it all, blend well? Or, how much water should I put in the sauce? Like, just this different thing. Basically, I was saying, here's what I got. What can I cook? And
yeah.
it honestly gave me a perfect recipe,
Oh
right?
yeah, I bet.
And
I
I
would be
was like,
surprised if it didn't. Yeah.
yeah, like I'm like, this is great, right? Like it actually like knew exactly like, when I overcooked something, or it was too like the sauce was too like, thick or something, or no, it was too thin, it was too watery, and then it like, it was like put this many grams of flour in, like kind of stuff, right? Like just like I was like really impressed with it. So like that's how like, an average Joe like me will use AI. But
Well,
then
you're underselling, because when we do theoretical work and whatnot, you use it very, very effectively for really high end purposes too. But yeah, I get it. I mean, the last time I got a new cell phone, I queried AI for, what are the best, most
yeah,
reliable cell phone cases, to look at, and then I made the decision. But it was helpful, you know,
yeah. I also
in a
use it for
trivial
movie
kind of way.
recommendations.
Yeah, 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 sure.
Hey, I really liked Project Hail Mary. What are some other movies I could watch? But
Right.
yeah, but in not to be super dark, but in the black market context, from this friend of mine, and what they're really trying to prevent in the cybersecurity field is you know personal data is being sold on the black market to train AI softwares to be able to like mimic things and break into things, and right there's a whole rabbit hole to this, but like
Yeah.
it's just you look at that and you're like, okay, so information power, right? To turning in the attempts to turn AI into it, to give AI expert power, which then in turn reality shaping power, and then
We're,
AI itself is a resource, so it could be resource power depending on who's obtaining it. Like
yeah.
it can just go bonkers, right, with the amount of power dynamics.
Well,
Um,
we're going to have a chapter on power and AI in the coming book, and we're going to do some episodes on, because this is the first time that a human tool will actually be able to exercise power as opposed to give us greater power. So
yeah,
if I got a tool as a hammer, I can use it to do things I couldn't do without a hammer, but the
mhm,
hammer doesn't have an ability to express itself and use itself to accomplish something.
right,
AI, whether we want to give it the attribution of consciousness or not, can still act with intention,
yes,
um, and can leverage social power. It's the first time a tool can leverage social power as opposed to give us additional social power. That's the
yeah.
idea, right?
You think
It
like
could shape our reality.
computers and cell phones, like they were just tools that
Tools, yeah,
gave us more power, right? But yeah, this is, oh yeah. And another conversation I had, is that, and again, this is a a still very ambiguous thing, but there's a lot of data about people using AI as like a therapist, right?
hmm
And again, we don't do
and
we,
and a romantic partner,
Yeah, there's a lot of
and
sci-fi movies
essentially,
on that one
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
But again, we're not therapists, but like just in terms of social services in general across North America, we know that you know a good therapist usually has a wait list, right? Or a good
Mhm.
social service usually has a pretty big wait list. And what's happening is that because, you'll have somebody that's struggling, they'll go to reach out to a service and then, they might get a response like, yeah, we can see you in about 2 weeks, or sorry, Dr. So and so's gone on vacation. He'll be back, at the end of August, like whatever kind of thing. They go like, well, okay, I I'll just ask AI what
AI
I should do.
AI doesn't go on vacation. It doesn't
Yeah.
sleep,
And it's
right?
in your pocket. And
Yeah.
it's there and it can answer. And the thing is like it doesn't give you bad answers. Now that's a bit of a hot take. It
Yeah,
doesn't,
because
like, the
sometimes it can.
information it gives you is not bad. It can be biased, right?
Mhm.
Because at least right now, AI is built to respond specifically into what you were feeding it. And naturally, if we are feeding it something, we are inherently biasing it with our intentions, right?
Yeah.
So again, complicated. There's a whole bag of worms that can be opened with this. But so yeah, and there is like studies showing that like people's mental health outcomes have been improving, right?
Oh, interesting. That
But
I
then
wasn't
there's
aware of. Yeah.
also other things showing, and again, I don't want to get too into it, but like there's also negative consequences as well, right?
Oh,
Like
I've heard
negative,
of AIs encouraging people to do self-harm.
yes.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
there's also the biggest one is AI induced psychosis.
Right.
So what
Yeah.
happens is you'll have somebody with a psychotic vulnerability, right? That will be
Mhm.
like, oh, I have a business idea or I have some type of idea. And AI will validate that so heavily that the person might actually go into a state of like grandiose psychosis, thinking that they have like you know, the answer to all the world's problems, so to speak, right? And it
Yeah.
becomes like a grandiose delusion that literally puts them into hospitalization. So
Well,
that's something that's happening as well. But then
yeah.
you're also having people that are having like their rates of depression and anxiety decrease. It
Yeah.
it just comes down to how the user is inputting information, but it's still like you know
And how the AI is trained too.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
it's like kind of like we just said, like at this point, what can we do other than observe and just be mindful and cautious about how we use such tools, right?
So maybe this is not just the age of attention. Maybe it's the age of mistrust and caution, right?
I mean,
Or caution and mistrust. Because I see myself that way. And I about 6 months ago, I did an AI search on this little river, little tributary that I spent my summers on in New Brunswick, and I adore it. I know every corner of it. I canoed it, and now my son and I kayak it when we go down there. And it's idyllic and pristine and beautiful, and no one's ever heard of it. It's called the Nerpus River. You can look it up, but it flows into the St. John River, which is a big deal. It's a big, big river. You look at the St. John River down halfway through the province, and it looks more like a giant lake, but it's a river, and it was like the heartbeat of the province for many, many years because there weren't highways, but you could go up and down the river and paddle wheelers and things like that. And I just wanted some history on this little Narapis River because it's inconsequential. And AI came back with this whole history of the Nerepus River, and it made it sound like this is as very much as important as the Amazon River, or they didn't say this, or the St. John River, or anything like. And I'm like, come on, I don't believe this. Yes, there's some historical events that happened. Yes, First Nations people no doubt used it for transport, but the way it came back and thought that I needed to hear how fantastic and important this little tributary was to the St. John River. And it was like, come on. And I had to tell AI, knock it off. I just want to know what happened on this river over the last 300 years, you know?
And that,
And and stop telling me it's played an critically important role in Canadian history when it didn't. Okay, it played an important role in people that needed a river there at the time.
yeah.
But um, yeah, yeah, I just wanted to know, but no, AI had to inflate its grandeur.
Yeah.
I liked it. I still like it, but that's it. That's all.
And that's what it comes down to is the critical thinking process that we have, right? So like we still need to maintain our skepticism, right?
Mhm.
Like skepticism is a healthy thing, right? Socrates taught
Never
us
need
that
it
for a
more.
reason. Like
Hmm.
it's right. We need
Yep.
to maintain that, no
Yep.
matter how far we go with technology and things. And that's kind of where we're falling right now is that there's people that just treat AI as always correct, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is,
Giving too much reality shaping power.
yeah, absolutely, because it can just be wrong, right?
Mhm.
Even on simple things. Like I think I asked AI the other day, like, is this still on Netflix? And it's like, yes. And I go and look and I'm like, it's not. Right. And I
Yeah.
made sure I put it in there like it's actually not.
Right.
Um, you know, and yeah, there's just so much there with AI. And also, job relevance, right? That sense of security and reality shaping power. I talked to a gentleman who's basically worried about his grandkids. He's like, I don't know what on earth my grandkids should go to school for. He's
Yeah.
like, I have no like everything that I learned about the world and what's a good career path and everything like that's all almost irrelevant now, right? I don't know. I like for our field, I mean, it's still up for debate. A lot of people obviously prefer the human connection, right? But a
Hmm.
lot of people are so desperate and have such high needs that accessibility becomes more important than human connection, right? Also, there's can be a lot of just administrative jobs that are going to be going away, right? There can be like all kinds of these things, right? Um, you know, one of my thoughts was architecture, right? Like,
Sure.
um,
Yeah.
I don't know anything about architecture, so I can't speak on it, as an
Mhm.
expert. But any architects listening, please correct me on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Like, if you're drawing up a schematic, right? Like, you're not you're not necessarily going to need to, have somebody who's an expert in like AutoCAD anymore, right? Because you can just type into AI, "Hey, create this," right, and it'll do it. Whereas, a lot of people have built their careers on mastering software to be able to produce an in-depth, blueprint or framework of how to do something, right? Musicians, oh God, don't even get me started as a musician.
Right.
I tested it out like just for shits,
Yeah.
and I was blown away by like how real it sounded. I fed it the stupidest thing too. I was like, you know, um, write a song about like put one of my friends' names in. I'm like, write a song about how Daniel is like the coolest cat on the town and how he has nice shoes or like something stupid like that, right?
Right.
And I'm like, do it in the style of Nirvana, but add like a 90s rap type thing to it. And like, I just something that was weird, right?
Yeah.
And it
Bunch of
did it.
random.
It did it.
Yeah.
And like, the singer was better than I was. Like, it's like, you know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, now here's, and you think about people who like, you know, mastered the violin or something, right? Like,
Hmm. Took years and
years,
years and
basically a
years.
PhD, and you
Yeah.
can just type into AI like make a violin track for me that sounds like this, and it just does it. It's like what on earth, right? Um, it's the same with visual artists too. But I also attributed it to, I was having this discussion one time about, because at first AI was making visual art, right? That was the big thing. And, it's like so many visual artists probably feel so duped. And I'm like, absolutely. And I'm like, and I almost feel like, in history, I don't know my exact years of when the camera was developed, but, you used to have people painting portraits of families, right?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you have this tool that can reflect light and then burn an image onto a piece of paper, right? So it's
Right.
like that takes 2 seconds, whereas painting a portrait could take hours, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
like,
you can even have a family portrait put together from individual separate photos,
yeah, now
right?
it's crazy.
We don't even have to get everybody together to have everybody doing a shiny, smiley, happy face family, you know.
Yeah. It's,
Absolutely. Our brains have not had the time to catch up to the capabilities. Um, and we're sort of out of the pandemic and into the and we haven't even got into the international dynamics and the changes in the international scale. And I suspect we're going to have to do a third and maybe fourth episode on this to look at how culture is being changed by power. And again, I go back to this is the first time in human history that something we produced can actually use power back on us, not
yeah,
just give us additional power, right? I mean, black powder or gunpowder and the gun wiped out the ninja, right? The ninja creed, and this, as I recall some history, Japan kept the gun away from Japan for as long as it possibly could, because the warrior class took years and years and years to achieve their ability to fight, and any you know guy with a gun could, if they got a lucky shot in there, kill somebody who took 15 years to achieve their level of combative abilities. And then the gun finally made it to Japan, and that changed changed the whole warrior class. Right? So, yeah. So yeah, the brain is trying to catch up. The brain doesn't like a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of complexity, and a lot of ambiguity, and that's what we're living through. And that means power's in flux, and that means trust is in flux,
mm,
and that means existing social orders are in flux, and and that means all of the things that applied to my life growing up will, and it's always been the case that generational differences have given way to, well, that worked for you, Dad, but that's not the world I'm living in. I got to find
yeah,
my own way. That's always been the case. You can't step in the same river twice. I've just bastardized a beautiful phrase in not such a beautiful way, but things move on, right? But there was a little bit more predictability in the various decades that I grew up in, relatively speaking, or at least we had a little more time to adjust to
yeah.
them, right? And now, what was true last week may not be true this week,
That's where
right?
we're at. You
Yeah,
know, yeah, I can
power's not going away. It's just,
not
it's
changing rapidly.
yeah, on that cultural level, and yeah, I'm sure we're still in an information age. We're still in an attention age, but I think we're very much in an age of mistrust in the very institutions that we thought we could trust
Yeah.
and maybe can't now. So it's a tough time to be a human being, um, overall. And yeah,
Yeah. I feel like this conversation became a lot bigger than we
very
intended.
quickly.
Where yeah,
Yeah, and
which I love because I love,
yeah,
being able to make multiple episodes out of just where we go. So
Yeah.
yeah, we are at our mark for the day, but please stay tuned because we're going to continue this conversation very, very soon.
Yeah, we'll go nation states next, I think, or at least international dynamics beyond just this. And we got a couple of announcements to make when you cue me to make those announcements, Adrian.
Yeah. I wonder, should we
What's
do
that?
them now or should we do them next week?
No, I think we should drop a couple things to for listeners to look out for, watch out for. I don't mean that negatively. Things coming out from Folks Leadership Group. Adrian is going to be championing in this fall online seminars where you can sign up, you can come on, you can learn probably within an hour and a half, some really intense, powerful psychology that you can take out there into the world. So you don't have to be, organizations can definitely sign people up for these, but you can sign up for these training sessions. Do you want to give us a few of the topic areas you're going to be presenting on, Adrian, just quick?
Yeah, so I mean, first two for sure are, in my opinion, the two most important things. We got social power,
Yeah.
obviously,
What a surprise.
12 forms of social power. And then we
Yeah.
also have understanding high conflict personalities. So,
Yeah.
again, how the dark side of humanity and the dark tetrad, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff we talked about in earlier episodes and continue to talk about all the time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, how to identify, manage, understand the power at play there. So those will be two things.
There'll be
Uh,
more than that too, but that's just to
oh
whet
yeah,
your
that's where we're
appetite.
starting. I
Yeah.
mean, and
And
then
these will be probably like Wednesday evening after work. Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday, we're playing with dates. And you can sign up for one, you could sign up for a few. And come out, and then we'll give you a virtual certificate, a little indicator, so you can build your resume. Say, I took this training with Vox Leadership Group. An hour-long session, hour and a half, whatever we work out. We're still working out some of the details, but we'll be
Mhm.
advertising that on LinkedIn. Follow us on LinkedIn, Folks Leadership Group, or you can follow me as well. I'm under Dr. Ted Vokes on LinkedIn. So follow us there. That'll all be coming out. We're doing some really proactive work on policies and procedures for the proactive containment and even prevention of people with dark traits utilizing their dark power strategies in your organizations. So we'll say a lot more about that, but we're doing this work to create workplace conduct policies and procedures that you could infuse right into your existing policies and procedures that will proactively discourage people with dark traits from playing out their classic tactics and patterns. Your culture will have to reinforce that. It's not enough to just put words on a page. Culture is the single largest determinant of how actually work gets done in organizations. So that's coming to support you on the proactive side of the dark tetrad. We're already capable of helping once you identify that, or help you identify people with dark traits who are operating within an organization or a team. And just a little side note here, you look on our website, Volks Leadership Group .com, and on the various platforms, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're watching us here, Substack. What's the one I'm forgetting that we're also on, Adrian? What's that?
Is it Apple?
Apple. Yes, it's Apple. Of course it is. So it'll be a little 4-minute video on a question that we get a lot when we're doing training, and it's often not the question that we show up for to train in, but people will bring up this whole thing about how do I lead Gen Xers, or how do I lead millennials, or how do I lead Gen Y. And we have a very, very powerful science-based answer to that question, delivered in 4 minutes. So that'll be coming shortly. If you're interested in how you do that, you might be surprised at the answer that you get in this little 4-minute clip. It's a conference that I was presenting at, and I came across a clip and went, damn, that's still absolutely valid today. So we'll be posting that a number of areas too. If you're interested in generational, well, leading and interacting with people in your workplaces, who come from different generational cohorts. So I'm going to leave it mysterious for now because it only takes 4 minutes to hear the whole picture. But science-based and it's kind of a cool answer, I think, if I do say so myself, given that I delivered it. So that's our what to look for on the horizon. And I guess our next episode, we're going to go back to culture and power and trust and living in an era of high mistrust, which means, who are we giving power to and who are we withholding it from? Who used to maybe have it? So, yeah.
There we have it. And I mean, yeah, lots coming up. So stay tuned for next time. We'll see you very soon. And we're Vox Leadership Group, and this is Social Power Lab, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Roger that. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Social Power Lab podcast. Make sure you join us next week as we continue to uncover the hidden dynamics of social power all around us, because every conversation changes the world one interaction at a time. You can listen to the Social Power Lab podcast on YouTube under Social Power Lab _VLG, on Spotify under Social Power Lab, on Substack under Social Power Lab, and on Apple Podcast under Social Power Lab. Thank you and have a wonderful day. This podcast was produced by Trenton Vokes. The theme was produced and written by Adrian Deschamps.